everybody, welcome to part 2 of the Cashmerette Concord t-shirt sew along. So this part is all the sewing from beginning to end, so make sure that you have watched part 1 for some of the tips and things that I have shared in part 1. Grab all of your notions, grab your fabric and everything, and let's get started. Grab your fabric, your thread, your cutting tools and pin cushion, your pattern weights, and your tracing tools and needles and tracing paper. And as an added convenience for this sew along, if you check the pinned comment down below, I have left timestamps for each pertinent section of the sew along for your convenience. And stay tuned to the end of the video where you'll see pictures and twirls of me in the completed garment. And if you have any questions, please leave them down in the comment section below and I will get back to you right away. Okay, let's get started. Grab your front and your back pieces. This first section will be all about sewing our shoulder seams together. And again, I am doing view C, a combination of view B and view C. So grab your front and your back pieces. The first section is talking about stabilizing these shoulder seams with clear elastic. I do not have that in my stash. I have a Sew Keys woven fuse. I'll show you what that is, but I'm going to go ahead and stabilize my back shoulder seams first, and then I'll come back in and do the zigzag stitch that it talks about here, and then press my seams to the back before we move on to the neckband. As I say, I am using the Sew Keys woven stay tape. This is a 1/2 inch wide. I absolutely love Sew Keys. I've had this for years, and I have had it at least 5 years. And this is how much, and I still have a couple packs left. So this is what I'm going to use to stabilize my shoulder seams. I will leave a link to where you can find this if you're interested in the description box. And so all you do is just press. You don't iron, you don't move back and forth at all. And you'll be able to see me doing the other shoulder just a moment. But you just lift your iron off, cut off any extra. That's usually what I do. You can always cut it early like this. You can always just go ahead and just cut about how much you think you'll need, have it, and you just press. Leave it on for a couple seconds. The directions and everything is on the package, and that's it. Now my shoulder seams are stabilized. I will head back to the sewing machine. Okay, and just so you know what machine I am using, I'm using a Brother SE400 machine, and I have my settings set to a 2.5 in my stitch length, and then my zigzag is set to 2.0, the width of my stitch. And so yeah, let's get started. Okay, a couple quick tips before getting started. So if you this pattern does call for 3/8 inch seam allowance to sew the entire top unless it's otherwise stated in the instructions. And so in order to figure out where your 3/8 inch is, what I suggest, if you can see here, I'm going to zoom in. What I have done I have added a piece of washi tape here and measured 3/8 inch from the needle, so I know exactly where to lay my fabric from here on out, just so it doesn't get distorted. We are using jersey, and so jersey tends to be stretchy, can tend to be a little slinky, might move around. You might find that the as you're sewing it can go down into the feed dog. So the first tip is you can most certainly use, I do have my stretch needle in here, but you can switch out this foot for a walking foot. I do have a walking foot, but it fits my other machine. It does not work on this one. My other machine is in the shop currently. So what I am going to do is besides, of course, using the right needle, I have this stabilizer, which is just embroidery stabilizer. And what I will do is place this periodically, not throughout the entire sew along, but periodically. If I find maybe a seam that I need to sew together, might need it, I will put this underneath just to prevent it from going down into my feed dogs or having any issues. Another thing I also suggest is that instead of using pins, that you use wonder clips to hold your seams together while sewing, just because, again, stretchy fabric, I think wonder clips work a whole lot better. So we're going to go ahead and use the zigzag stitch and begin sewing 3/8 of an inch. And actually this shifted a little bit, so I'm going to put this back down. But we're going to go ahead and shift. I will back stitch at the start. And I'm going to put this on slow motion just so you can kind of see what it is that I am doing. So just did a little bit of a back stitch there. And I'm not doing a very wide zigzag stitch. You saw the stitch length was set at 2. And we're doing this at both shoulder seams. Okay, and so this is what it looks like. I will do the other shoulder seam and I will be back. Okay, I am doing view B. I'm doing the V neckband. And so just for those who are doing it, what you needed to do was sew your, iron your neckband wrong sides together. And then you form this loop. So this is what mine looks like. I went ahead and formed the loop, and you overlap the bottom pieces. So your raw edges are out this way. And so you are going to overlap the pieces, and then you measure up 1.5 inches on each side here. And then you're going to go ahead and stitch at 1/4 inch seam allowance up this side. So I put a pin here. I'll add a pin on this side, 1.5 inch, and then I will go ahead and baste these open ends here, that 1.5 inch on this side. Okay, all complete. You can't really see my stitches because I'm using the same color thread as the kind of the brown in the fabric, but that is now complete. We're going to move on now to stay stitching. Now that that is complete, we're going to move on to stay stitching our neckline. What we're going to do, again, you won't be able to see in my fabric all that well, but I will show me sewing it together. You do want to stay stitch now that center point in the front piece of your bodice, and then you're going to want to clip down into that section, and then you'll be placing the neckband into that area, marking that, and then we will be sewing it together. And so what I will do is walk through these next several steps on camera here, and we will get started on this neckband. So I shortened my stitch length down to 1.4, and I am sewing at 1/4 inch seam allowance, which for me is right, if I can show you, is going to run right up here against this edge. And I am going to sew, as the directions say, down that V to create a nice V. And the stay stitch, it just allows you to stabilize that area. Okay, so as you can see here, I went ahead and stabilize that neck area. And what I'm going to do now is clip into the V but not through the stitching, and then go ahead and place the neckband on top, right sides together, lining up the corners of the stay stitching on the neckband and the neckline, forming an X, and pin it in that area. So I will show you what that looks like. Okay, now you have your V, your neckband laying on top of your front bodice piece. It is right sides out. I showed you the inside for the sewing just so you can see where the stitch line was, but it is right here. My stitch line on the neckband is here. You can faintly see that. And then what you do is go ahead and stick a pin through the point where the basting stitch met, and at that point on the shirt. And so go ahead and stick your pin through that, and then go ahead and pin down, because what you're going to do is you're going to move this, and I'll show you shortly. You'll move this up the side of the neckband, and you're going to sew 2 inches down to the pin, and then you're going to leave your needle down in the fabric, pivot, and then go up this side 2 inches. And so I will show you what that looks like momentarily. So what I have done is just went ahead and wonder clip this together. I turned the V-neck piece, the neckband, up to meet the neckline piece, and I went ahead and measured 2 inches, and I'm going to now sew 2 inches down this way at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to pivot, do the same thing on this side, pivot and sew upwards this way 2 inches at 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I will show you what that looks like. So here you do not have to use a zigzag stitch. I am using a straight stitch again at my 3/8 inch mark line, and I'm going to sew to the pin, which is here. And again, you do not need to take your needle out. Just pivot the work over, and then go ahead, make sure your needle stays down, and then stitch 2 inches up the other end. And I will show you what that looks like when it's all done. Okay, so the V-neck part of the neckband is attached, and so that's this piece here. And what you can do as part of a tip that's noted in the pattern is flip the neckband to the inside of the tee, just to make sure that everything is lying flat and it looks good how you think you would want it. And so from my perspective, again, it's not all the way attached, and I understand it's a busy print, but it looks fantastic. So now what we're going to do is move on to pinning the remaining neckband to the neckline, and then we will go ahead and complete it. Okay, so what you're doing is attaching your neckband now to the rest of your neckband, to the bodice, right sides together. So what you will notice is once you have, and of course all your notches should be marked, you will have attached at the shoulder seams here, as well as the back center. And so what you're going to do is just pin at those areas, and you will notice, and I'm going to show you also as I'm sewing, there is, you will have to stretch this piece, because the actual bodice piece is a little bit more room and longer than the neckband piece, and that's on purpose so you can get a good fit. And so what I'll show you, because what you'll need to do is go ahead and now stitch this, stitch the rest of the neckband together at 3/8 inch seam allowance all the way around. And as you are sewing, you're going to do a slight stretch, not overstretch, but a slight stretch to meet those seams here, so you can sew that together, meet the raw edges. And of course, you know, this part was done already. So I'm starting just to show you. I'm going to start at the shoulder seam so you can see how much fabric will be loose underneath. And then we're going to stretch and sew down to here. I'll show you that. And then for the rest, you can go ahead and do the same process. Sew the rest of the neckband together. And then we can move on to the sleeve tabs. Okay, so what you're going to notice here, this is where that V is already connected. If I lift this up, you see the bodice is a lot more room there. And so what you're going to have to do is, and I have my needle down just so I can show this to you. As you're sewing, this is just a slight stretch. You don't want to overstretch, just a slight stretch. And I'm using a straight stitch. Because what I will do, if I did not say this earlier, I'm serging all of my seams. And so what I will do is then after I go ahead and sew around the entire neckband, I will go ahead and do a serge as well. And that's just a little bit easier. You can most certainly serge this entire thing, but just for those who do not have a serger, as long as you have a straight stitch on your machine, you can go ahead and just straight stitch or use pinking shears to finish off your edges after you've sewn this part. But you're going to have a slight stretch, and you'll see me slightly stretch, and I will sew down to that V where we stopped, that 2-inch mark where we stopped here. I'm going to stop right there. You see my thumb? I'm going to stop right there, but I just want to show you it's just a slight stretch. You're not overstretching, and we will do that for the entire neckband. So what I've done is a slight stretch. I made sure my point is lined up as I showed you where my thumb was. Made sure everything was evened out, and all I did was do a slight stretch. We don't want to overstretch this at all. So we're going to go ahead and get to sewing this area. Again, make sure you are not having any of your edges curl up. Make sure everything is meeting underneath. Nothing has shifted. You can most certainly pin all of this down. I usually don't. I just hold with my fingers and go from there. And again, this is where my V, I kind of left a thread there, if you can tell, where I know where to stop. Because again, I don't have to go all the way down to the V. And that is it. Go ahead and finish the rest of the neckline, and we will be back. Okay, so I went ahead and did a zigzag stitch all the way around the neckline. And again, I apologize, you can barely see that, but there is the zigzag stitch line, and I did that all the way around the neckline just to keep the collar, the inside seam, rather from you know, folding out or anything like that. So let's move on to sewing the sleeve tabs. So the next pieces you are going to need are your sleeve tabs. So these are your sleeve tabs, and you will also need your sleeve, because what you're going to do first is pin 2 sleeve tabs, because you did cut out 4. You're going to pin 2 of the sleeve tabs together, right sides together, and then you're going to sew around, right, the long sides and point with a straight stitch all the way around here. And then you're going to leave this end open, but you're going to do this to both pieces. Stitch all the way around both sides here, again leaving these end pieces open. Then you're going to clip this end, just a little clip, not very much. You're not going to clip through the stitch line. And then you're going to place these tabs on the wrong side of the sleeve piece at the top, and I will show you that once we get there. I also wanted to mention, as a point of reference, when I turned this inside out, I did just use my fingers to turn it inside out. However, if you have a point turner, which tool which looks like this. You can use this to turn it right side out, or if you have turning that look like chopsticks, you can use that to push this. But this was pretty short and easy to turn inside out with my finger, so I didn't use any tool for that. But those are just a couple tools that you can use to turn this right side out if you do have trouble turning this right side out. Okay, so what you will notice here, I went ahead and sewed 3/8 inch all around, and you see the point here. This is where you're going to cut off up to the stitch line, not through it. And what I also did was I went ahead and graded my seam allowances. So what that means is I went ahead and cut some of this bulk out, as you can see on the side. So I cut this pretty much in half, the excess, before I turned it right side out. And then this is what it looks like after I have done that. And so this is our tab, and we're going to go ahead and place this. I'll do this other one here, and then we'll place it on the sleeve, and then we will go ahead and keep going. Okay, now grab your sleeve piece. If you can tell here, I have traced out, I use my tracing paper, my marking paper, to go ahead and mark where the tab will go. And the center point is just that circle that you would see on the pattern if you have it. And so what you're going to do is your tab piece, you're going to go ahead and move that down slightly across the top of that line. And what you're going to do is, I'm going to move this over just a little bit, hopefully you can see. What you're going to do is stitch across here at 1/4 of an inch, right? And then once you stitch across 1/4 of an inch, you're going to fold this down. I'm just going to try to demonstrate this for you. You're going to fold this piece down towards the hem, and then you're going to sew a square. So that square you have there, you're going to go ahead and sew a square to secure the tab down, again using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And what you'll have is, make sure your tab is straight, what you'll have is the tab facing down this way. But that is what you're going to do, and I will show you what that looks like when I come back. Okay, so hopefully you can see I've stitched across. Now I have turned my tab down towards the hem, and you're sewing a 1/4 inch seam box square on this piece. And so if you can see, here's my box piece here, and so I'm lining up where my 1/4 inch would stop with that box, and I will do that all the way around and sew my box. Okay, so I have sewn my box all the way around. I'm going to do this to both sleeves, and then from there we're going to move on to the next section, which is sewing the sleeve together. We're almost done. We're going to sew the sleeves together, and then we're going to do we're going to sew the curved hem, which is also part of view C, and then we're going to sew our sides together, finish our sleeves off, and then finish the bottom hem. Okay, now we have our front and back piece laid out right sides up. The front is going this way, the back is going this way. And how you know this is the back is because your back, remember you clipped your notches, you have 2 notches for the back piece that will match up with your sleeve. So now you're going to lay your sleeve right sides down. Let me put this on here so you can at least see. What you're going to do is, and I actually love laying sleeves in this way as opposed to trying to gather a sleeve in, but at any rate, you have your 2 notches in your back sleeve. So you know this is the back of your sleeve, this is the back of your shirt, and what you're going to do is pin this or wonder clip it, which I will be doing all the way around, and I will show you what that looks like. Okay, so what I want you to see here is I have clipped my sleeve to the bodice front and back. And again, this is the back. You see my notches here, they line up on both sides for my back pieces, and you will notice there is just a little bit. You will have to stretch it ever so slightly, like we did with the neckline, to just make sure that everything fits as you're sewing along. And what you're going to do is go ahead and sew the sleeve to the bodice. Again, slightly stretching, not much, the armhole in between wherever you pinned or wherever you clipped the sleeve, and then you're going to press that seam allowance towards the sleeve. And then you're going to do this for both sides. Okay, so your sleeve is attached. I have gone ahead and ironed mine. Again, I am serging all of my seams. I went ahead and ironed towards my sleeve. This is the sleeve. I went ahead and ironed towards the sleeve. So you're ironing towards that way. What we're going to do now is sew the curved hem. I am again doing view C. And so what I'm going to do is pin. I'm going to turn my garment here right side out. And what I will be doing is pinning the front hem to the front right sides together, and then sewing around the curved edge. So I will be right back once I have pinned that in place. Okay, so this is the front bodice piece here laying out, and you have your front hemband. What you're going to do is go ahead and pin or clip that hemband all the way around. And you do have notches on the side there, so that's pretty much where you're stopping at, right there. And so you're going to clip or pin this all the way around the curved edge. And then you're going to go ahead and sew around that curved edge. And then what you're going to do is turn the hem, this bottom piece facing to the wrong side, right? And then being careful to maintain the curve at the hem. Then you're going to go ahead from the right side. You're going to top stitch the hem facing in place using a zigzag stitch. So that might sound a little confusing, but one of the things I am going to do, and you may want to consider this as well, I am going to go ahead on and stitch 3/8 inch seam allowance all the way around this curved end. And then what I'm going to do, because again we're going to flip this over, so then you're going to have that raw edge. You can also, and what I'm going to do is finish that edge, this top edge here, with a serge. I'm going to go ahead and finish that top edge with a serge all the way around. So when I flip it over and I do the top stitch, that top part will not be raw. But again, it's knit. Knit doesn't ravel. At least most knits that I'm aware of does not ravel. So, and this does not ravel. So I don't have to do it, but I am just for aesthetic purposes. So I am going to go ahead and stitch 3/8 inch all the way around this curved edge. And then I will go ahead and serge this right here, this edge here, and then I'll turn it right side out. But I'll show you what this looks like after I have it all stitched together. Okay, so I'm going to show you here. What I have done is serge just this piece right here all the way around the top edge, but I did sew around the curve 3/8 inch all the way around. And the pattern doesn't call for this, but I went ahead, if you can tell, I clipped into this curve, so I have a nice curve when I turn this right side out and begin to top stitch. So let me show you, and you want to do that for the front hem band and the back hem band. So go ahead and do that part, and I'll show you what it looks like once it's been turned right side out and pressed, and how good the curve should look. All right, so as you can tell, we have a nice curve going on here. Again, I had clipped into that curve on the wrong side, and then once I turned it over, and again, because we're going to top stitch, that's why I went ahead and serged this edge right here, because this will be showing on the inside, and I just wanted a clean finish. And so that is also written in the pattern as well. But now once you have that all, give it a good press, and you have this flipped over, then what you're going to do is top stitch all around the curve. And so what I'm going to do is use a very long stretch stitch. I'm going to use probably about a 3.5 is what I want to use. Just a long, you won't be able to really see it, but that's just my preference for finishing off that top stitch all around the edge. Again, do that for your front and back, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, so we have sewn the hem. I've turned it up. You see the nice curve going there. Again, you can barely see my stitching because I'm using the same color thread as my fabric. But we have got our stitching all the way around. What we're going to do now is turn this right side out and sew up the sleeve and side seam. So I will show you once that's all pinned together, and then we'll sew that together, and we're almost done. Okay, as you can tell, I have folded it back right sides together and have clipped all the way down. And this is, I want to point something out. This is why I love Cashmerette patterns. See on my, the pattern piece I cut out, which was the GH, has that nice little curve to it. So nice little curve. But at any rate, you want to go ahead and clip all the way down. Now, if you're doing view C like I am, you're going to sew. You're going to stop sewing right here at the top where that facing piece meet front and back, and all your notches should be matching. And you're going to go ahead 3/8 inch seam allowance and go ahead and stitch this down. Nest your underarm seams, and I'll show you what that means in a second here. Okay, so when I say nest your seams, you have your front and your back piece, and so I'm going to unclip this. So to ensure that your seam lines meet up, you want to just go ahead and turn one down. Doesn't matter which one, turn one down and one seam allowance up, and you put them together so they're nested together, they're meeting. See that? And then you can go ahead and clip that in place, so when you're sewing down this end, that seam meets right there at the underarm. So I'll show you what that looks like after I've sewn it. Okay, so this is the result of nesting the seam. As you can tell, those 4 points meet. So you have the seam going across this way and then the seam down, and that is where it meets, and that's as a result of the nesting. Now I will go from here and do the other side, so the side seam as well as finish off the inside, and then we will be moving to our next step. Okay, so when I'm getting right here where the facing pieces are meeting here, this is the front and back piece, I'm going to stop stitching right before that piece right here. So I want to show you that just in case it's just confusing where you need to stop. So you want to stop right at the top there where those two pieces meet. So I'm gonna try my best here through the viewfinder, make sure everything is lined up nicely. And so I'm gonna back stitch. Oops. I'm gonna back stitch there. And that's it. Okay, we are at finishing the sleeve. So now that you have sewn your front and back together at the side seams, everything is meeting now. Now it's time to do the hem sleeves. So again, I'm doing view C with the tabs, remember. So it is very, very simple for view C. All you're going to do is turn that sleeve hem under 1 inch to the inside, press and pin, and then sew around the edge of the hem either with a twin needle or a small zigzag stitch or cover stitch from the outside. So if you're doing view C, this is what it looks like after you have turned it up 1 inch. As you can see, I serged again my edges so I have a clean finish on the inside. And what you're going to do now is turn this right side out and top stitch all the way around. Or if you have a cover stitch machine, I do not. So you can turn this right side out and top stitch all the way around. And then we're going to finish the tab sleeve. Sorry about that. And I will show you how that looks when we get to that point. Okay, if your machine allows, just something else you want to go ahead and consider. If you're sewing in a curve like this, the armhole, the sleeve hem, go ahead and take off your arm piece. So all you have to do is just turn this around into the machine, and that does the circular motion for you, so you don't have to worry about stretching it out of shape or anything like that to finish off your sleeve hem. And as a point of reference, I have lengthened my stitch length to a 4 and my stitch width is a 3, and I'm doing a zigzag stitch all the way around the sleeve. And you can feel this is the edge of the sleeve where it's turned under, and you can go ahead and just stitch all the way around. And I am now meeting back where I started. Okay, we are done. The button has been added. I used a animal print button that I had in my stash. No, it doesn't match perfectly, but I love it. It does not have to match perfectly. You can do whatever you want with the items that you sew. But if you're doing view C like I am, you don't turn, even though you did that top stitch around, you are not turning it up. You're just scrunching it. And so what I would highly recommend is you try your shirt on and then do the scrunching, pin it in place to where you are comfortable, and then stitch down the button. There is no buttonhole because this is not functional. And so yeah, that is it. I hope you all enjoyed, and the next clip you'll see is me in the shirt and a few clips for you.